Welcome to another episode of 2021 War Room Reports. Last week we had Nick Faribault going over the offensive linemen and tight ends. This week we have Justin Melo going over running backs, fullbacks, wide receivers. Glad to have him on. I'm going to do a quick intro for him, and then he's going to take it away, giving you guys his socials and how to contact him. But this is a guy that I've known for 5-6 years. I've watched his growth. It's been an organic growth from a guy just tweeting about the game to getting, journalist jobs, writing jobs. And then now he's forking out, interviews left and right. Justin, thanks for getting on. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Pleasure's all mine. Always excited to talk some ball, especially this time of year.
Always. Give the people a little bit of an intro on you and then where they can find some of your work.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at JustinM_FL. If you're familiar with I interview the NFL draft class. And when I say that, I mean I try to interview pretty much everybody. And this year, hitting some crazy numbers right now. The interview series is available on the Draft Network. If you're an NFL draft fan, I'm sure you know the Draft Network and you've heard of us. So my interviews can be found on there, dropping at least one every single day. I've decided that, up until now, until the draft, I wanted to ramp things up a little. So I'll be dropping 2 to 3 every single day until then. So a lot of content coming your way, getting to know these players. I'm a tape guy at the end of the day, of course. I got into the draft because I love the scouting process. I love watching guys and forming my own opinion. But, the interview series I feel is something I can bring to the table that's a little bit different. So make sure you head over to the Draft Network and check out the series and get to know these players before your favorite team drafts them.
Absolutely. And I enjoy it. Like I said, I've watched you from the start, and I really am, I would say, just like I told Nick, I'm highly invested in the guys that I really respect around the game, and very excited to get you on and have your intel and show and edify how you go through the process. For those just now watching, this might be your first time watching, a little rundown on myself, a guy that's been around the game for my whole life, little league all the way to college, had some recruiting gigs, scout team video work for colleges, played the game, just a guy that loves football. I would say that I probably see the game from a different viewpoint, not too different, but definitely trying to provide difference. And what we're trying to do here is just go over my top 10. Justin's going to give his opinion. And what we're trying to do is just edify the co-host and just find differences in viewpoints and try to provide value for you guys. So I'm going to share the screen to the website. So for the people that want to see some more of my work, if you are interested, it's going to be blog.thebarnesuniversity.com. That's where you can find all of these rankings. It's a website. I really try to make it as easy as a 10-year-old, easy for a 10-year-old to read, and as complex for, the most avid football fan to also read. So I try to make it very inclusive. Let's find these guys. Running backs. So as you can see, January 6th is the last time I touched these rankings. So of course I've watched more tape on guys. Of course I've organized, but I really wanted this to be the central location of how we do this series. It gives it an organic feel. It gives it a snapshot of what I was thinking at the time. And it allows me to, take counsel from others. So without further ado, number 1, Najee Harris was my number 1 back. 2, Travis Etienne. 3, Javonte Williams. 4, surpriser, Colin Hill. 5, Michael Carter. 6, Trey Sermon. 7, Chuba Hubbard. 8, Rakeem Boyd. 9, Kenneth Gainwell. 10, Ramondre Stevenson. And then there's my running backs 11 through 34. So what stands out to you initially when you look at this list, Justin? And I'll listen to your eval.
Yeah, for me, I guess Kylan Hill, and you kind of said it there as a surprise. Certainly having him this high or as high as you do would probably qualify as the biggest surprise on your rankings. From what I heard there, it sounds like 1, 2, 3, we have it the same. I've got Najee Harris 1, I've got ETN 2, and I've got Javonte Williams 3. I watch Kylan Hill, interesting player, about 5'10", 214. Coaching staff there at Mississippi State, they can't say enough good things about him as a leader. He's got a great build. He can catch the ball too. I think that's one thing he doesn't get enough credit for. They did use him out of the backfield and can catch passes out there. So I guess my concern with him would be, can he vary his speeds? Sometimes I feel like he's a bit of a one speed guy, but he's a tough guy. He can catch the ball. He can play in pass pro. He's a good leader. So I would absolutely, think that, there's definitely a room for him in this league and that he is going to get drafted. For me personally, I had it the same as you there with the top 3. I got Michael Carter 4. Just looking now, I got Kenneth Gainwell 5 as of now, and I'm still working through things, and I might change a couple of these, but for the most part, this is how I'm gonna have it. I got a big gap. I think one guy you didn't have there that I think is probably worthy of a spot somewhere between 6 and 10 is Trey Sermon out of Ohio State. I'm a big fan of his game. I got Jamar Jefferson out of Oregon State on the back end of my top 10. Chuba Hubbard, I know you had him in there. And Khalil Herbert, that's another guy that I'm a fan of. I also have who I got here, Jared Patterson from Buffalo, although, I don't know how high the ceiling is at the next William, but there's some good guys in this class, man. Javion Hawkins is a sleeper to me, if there can be such a thing coming out of Louisville, but that's a guy that really excites me.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned some of the guys that I'm in agreement with in terms of how they'll translate to the NFL. Just for the Colin Hill eval, just to circle back, I feel like he's a guy that the reason why I have Alvin Kamara is really because I feel like their situations are somewhat similar in terms of Kamara was a guy that started at Alabama and didn't get that many opportunities. And then he went to Tennessee and was kind of, he still was an underrated guy. You saw the skill set, you saw the traits, but
yeah, they didn't use him enough.
Exactly.
That's true.
Exactly. And it was just a glimpse of what he could become. And I see the same thing with Colin Hill, almost very, very similar builds, very similar skill sets. You put him in an offense that, highlights some of those skill sets he could be and have that kind of impact. I really do think that's why I feel like it's really about situation with him. And, when you have players and prospects, when you think of, okay, if he goes to this system and having all these things work right, then he'll become something. Yes, that is a red flag, but that's why you draft. That's why we go through this process.
Right.
Another guy, Michael Carter, he's definitely, when I do my final rankings and here in a couple weeks, he definitely would be higher. My mindset here was you saw a player that is incredibly light on his feet. I mean, this guy's movement skills is out of this world. And one of the things that I look for with running backs is a trick over the trade. You may or may not know is just their ability in a vacuum. What can they do in a vacuum? What can they do in 5, 10, 15-yard spurts? Because that's essentially the game. What can they do in that, 2 to 3 seconds? And Michael Carter is probably one of the best backs in that short area quickness and that burst. Another guy you mentioned was Jamar Jefferson. He was a guy that is not on this list, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this series. Was initially I've since watched him, but I did not have him on these lists. Give us a little more detail about Jamar Jefferson and how he translates at the next level.
Yeah, it's funny because you talk about the trick of the trade and what can you hang your hat on. And for me, when I look at a guy like Jamar Jefferson, about 5'10", 217, coming out of Oregon State, his ability and what he does in space is just unbelievable. He's such a creative guy with the ball in his hands. He's a tough guy. He's tough to bring down. I remember the first game I put on when I was scouting him, and I didn't know a ton about him going in. I can raise my hand up and say that he's a guy that's been slept on. Oregon State doesn't always get a lot of credit and whatnot, but I put the tape on and I go to watch him against Oregon in 2020. I go, let me go check this guy out. Especially let me watch him against some solid competition. Oh my, what he did to Oregon was just unbelievable. he decimated them all game long. He had more than 200 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. I came away from that tape, and of course I watched more. I watched him against Washington in 2020, but I came away from that tape thinking, man, why aren't we talking about this guy more? He's got great vision with the ball in his hands. He's been so productive there. The numbers are through the roof. He can catch the football, so that's another thing. He's not a one-trick pony. You know how it is nowadays in this league. You got to be able to catch the ball and do something, and he's dangerous in that area of the game. So he's a guy, he's a guy that strikes me as a player that's going to outperform his draft slot because he's not going on day one. I don't think, he's probably not going on day 2 either. I doubt that, truthfully. So these guys going on day 3. I expect him to get drafted. I don't think he'll be a UDFA. I do expect him to get drafted, but he goes on day 3, and I think he's going to have a good career. He's a guy, again, that really, really excites me when I watch him.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. I watched that Oregon tape as well, and it was phenomenal. I think, for the Titans, I think that if he's there late, and they haven't found a guy that they really want to kind of, be that spell back for Derrick Henry. For all accounts, I've kind of bounced ideas off. I'm going to be honest, Jamar Jefferson is a guy I'm not sure on yet. And good thing, I got a few more weeks to kind of solidify that. But I think,
right.
he'd be good in the wide zone. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I can see him fitting an offense like that. I definitely can. So if I'm the Titans' perspective, I would love to think that Darrington Evans can fill that role. He better be able to fill that role. They took him where they took him, right? And I do think he showed a lot of good flashes as a rookie, in my opinion. I really do think he did. He was just, he was banged up. He didn't get to play as much as he would have liked, and it was a bit of a weird year for rookies last year with everything getting canceled. OTAs, rookie minicamp, camp, and whatnot, but. Titans got a lot of holes, man, to be honest with you. This is going to be a big class for them. I don't know that, I know it's a day 3 pick we're talking about here, but I don't even know that they could spend a pick on running back. I really don't, with everything else going on at corner, at receiver, at tight end, some edge depth, at tackle. I think they needed some depth on the interior, perhaps on the interior, both on the D line and on the O line. So I don't know that they could spend a pick on running back, but in relation to Jamar Jefferson, I do like the fit there. I do think he could fit their offense. Again, he's a versatile guy. He can do a little bit of everything. He can play in pass pro. He hit a ton of huge runs in college. If you go look at you look at the game log, look at the game splits, you'll see that this is a guy that can score every time he touches it. So if they use a pick on him, you're not going to hear me complain because I'm a big fan of the player.
Gotcha. That's why we have you on. I'm gonna go to and kind of deviate a little bit. That was a top 10. I have some guys 11 through 34 there, as you can go back and see. But here's a project that I did, off-season game plan. And at the back end of my project, I like to, probably have potential undrafted free agents or guys that might slip through the cracks and be available later. Now, some of these guys, when I did it, thought they would be available. Some of them might actually get drafted. A guy like Jared Dokes here, as you can see, might be taken. He's a phenomenal big back. Out of this list here, as you can see, the running backs, who do you like here? And kind of give some of if you have a backstory, if you've interviewed them, and just kind of speak to the prospect and speak to the person as well.
Yeah, I think a guy, if I'm looking at that list that jumps out at me, I remember speaking with Jaquan Hardy out of Tiffin. I spoke to him a couple of months ago. It's been a while. I'd have to go back and look up that interview, but I know that he impressed me, and there was a reason that I got with him to begin with because I thought he had a great story. Dokes, I agree with you, is a guy that I like. I love everything they do there at Cincinnati. And one thing about him that I don't think us as draft evaluators, sometimes we don't take into account enough of is the coaching staff that they played for, right? And how much that matters. And a guy like Dokes, I love everything they do there at Cincinnati. With Luke Fickell being the head coach, being a terrific head coach, even a guy like Freeman as the defensive coordinator, which he was there. Don't underestimate. Yeah, Dokes. I know he didn't coach Dokes being the running back, but don't underestimate how much Dokes could have grown by going up against a Freeman defense in practice every single day, and that knowledge that he's able to share with him on that side of the ball. So that's a guy that I really like. Another one last one on your list that jumps out at me a little bit bit is Chris Evans at Michigan, because I think he's still kind of just scratching the surface of his potential. I don't think he's reached his full potential. I think things at Michigan just didn't bounce his way. I believe he got hurt one year, came back this year, and obviously Michigan didn't get to play a full season due to COVID. They had a bit of a running back rotation going on there. I think they had 3 guys, and they let them all touch the ball. So we haven't seen enough Chris Evans, in my opinion, and that. You know how this is. Sometimes in this draft process, the unknown gets you a little excited, right? It's like, well, I think this guy's a big time player, and I haven't seen enough of him, or I think he's got a chance to do something special. One guy that I'll add to your list there is a guy, and I'll put my hand up. I only discovered him a couple weeks ago myself, but I really enjoyed the tape. Think he's got some fun potential. Is Keen Nwangwu out of Iowa State, excuse me. And I believe I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Keen Nwangwu, Iowa State, about 6 foot 210. The thing with this guy is he played behind some terrific backs, right? He played behind David Montgomery, and he played behind Breece Hall, and Hall lit the world on fire this year with his rushing totals there. So this is a guy that hasn't had enough opportunity. But what did he do when he did get the ball? He averaged 5.2 yards per carry throughout his career on his touches, and he averaged nearly 27 yards per kick return. This is a big-time kick returner for Iowa State that always put them in good positions, when it comes to the field position battle. So that's a guy that very much so intrigues me. I don't know for sure if he'll get drafted, but I do think that at the very least, that special teams ability, he should absolutely be able to find a home for himself.
Absolutely. Yeah, guys, that's why we have Justin Melo on. That's great insight. Found a guy from Iowa State. I'm not even going to try to, butcher. I'm not even going to butcher his name, but I have heard of that. I have watched tape on him, and I haven't included him. But this is why we have you on, because viewers get to hear that. They get to go and find him, go and search him. He has some burst, man, and I think that you find a guy like that late or as an undrafted free agent, that's
right.
a sleeper right there. And
I just want to shout out you for 1 second real quick for having John Rain on your list. John Rain is my guy over at Northwestern. I love John Rain. I know him well. I got to interview him recently. I got to interview him recently. Excuse me. I don't believe I've published that yet, but that's a fun little guy, and they did some things with him there at Northwestern, right? He lined up in the backfield. They flexed him out, of course, to the tight end position. He could line up on the hip of the tackle. So that's a fun little guy that I think you can move around and get some things out of. I'm looking forward to John Rain. Probably going to have to go somewhere as an undrafted free agent, but I'm looking forward to see him get a chance and try to make a roster with his versatility.
Absolutely. I love Rain, and we'll be getting to those fullback prospects here soon. But just love the insight that we're getting from Justin Melo here. I love the Dokes insight going up against, great, just looking at it from a broad perspective. That's something that I definitely believe in. I believe in big picture simplicity, right? That's a very, some would say that might be complex, but it's a very simple thing. Like if you're there in the day-to-day with Cincinnati, you know who the defensive coordinator is. So it's like those simple things that football guys know, that he's going up against a great defensive coordinator. This running back is seeing these type of looks, so he's learning a great deal. But then big picture simplicity, but then the nuance in the now. Like you knew the certain traits that he has. You know how he gets it done. Combining the two is very important. Big picture simplicity, being nuanced in the now. You mentioned Jaquan Hardy, exceptional start and stop ability. I mean, really love him as a prospect. And another guy that I would mention is, and people can go and watch tape on him, is Trendon Knox out of Marshall. This guy's a big physical back. And when we start looking at the fullbacks, he's so physical that I thought that, if he puts on another 10 to 15, he'd be a great fullback. He's a very selfless player. I would definitely recommend you guys to look up Trendon Knox out of Marshall. And let's get to those fullbacks. I want to see what you think about these fullbacks that I had, because some of them are they're going to be traditional fullbacks, and then like guys like I mentioned a while ago in Trendon Knox. Let me find these guys. Oh, there you go. I did it recently. Some are more recent ones. On March 19th, fullback edition. So we got number 1, easy transition, Ben Mason. And I have to stop on him because I believe he's probably the only draftable guy. And just watching tape of him is a joy, man. It's so fun watching him. It makes you love the game. That's why I just love Ben Mason. The guy can provide reps on special teams, go down there and tackle people, block, be a fullback. I know it's somewhat of a dying position, but it's still used. And really love Ben Mason. Got Torrey Carter at 2. Trey Reagan is a big back. I feel like he can obviously be a running back as well, but he's another guy that studying the psyche, a lot of what you do, looking at interviews. The guy says he's going to do anything to make a roster. So if someone needs a fullback, that possibly could be a role for him. Then I got the Brendan Knox there, and then John Rain. So what do you think about this list? And elaborate on the eval.
Yeah, I haven't spent a ton of time watching fullbacks, but Ben Mason, I love what you said there because it's so true, right? When you watch Ben Mason, you can't help but smile because just that throwback feeling that he gives you of being such a traditional fullback, right? He's not messing around. He knows what his role is, and he loves playing it. And look, you're right. You're right. Like, how many teams, employ a traditional fullback nowadays? Unfortunately, not a ton of them. But you look at what a team like Tennessee has done with a Kari Blossing game, having him line up in front of Derrick Henry, having him help your bell cow do what he does, and run a couple routes, and catch a couple balls and do a couple things. If you're trying to build an offense, I look at a team like the Detroit Lions, right, who are going in with a new coaching staff in Dan Campbell. They got a little bit of uncertainty at the quarterback position. I know they traded for Jared Goff, but I get the feeling that that's going to be a run-heavy football team, especially in year one, as that coaching staff starts to adapt to what they have. They've invested a lot into the running back position. When I look at a team like that, there's a place for Ben Mason in this league still. And you know what? Who's going to know him better than the Detroit Lions, right? He played his college ball right down the street there at Michigan. So when I look at a team like that, that's a fit that I would love to see the Detroit, whether he gets drafted or not, I would love to see Ben Mason end up with the Lions.
That makes too much sense. They're a skip and a hop down the road from watching Ben Mason and having that connect. That's actually a very good connection there, because Dan Campbell, as we all know, if you've been following the football league in the past 5 to 10 years, you know how fiery he is. He was like that with the Dolphins during his interim head coaching situation with Miami, and then you obviously see the press conferences. I mean, it's a match made in heaven. So that's a very good connection there, actually.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's something I would love to see.
Absolutely. So, I mean, fullback, like you said, it's a very short list. It makes it very easy, but this is one of the better fullbacks I've seen in Ben Mason. So I'm glad we even got to be blessed by watching his tape this year. Let's go to wide receivers. I feel like this is going to be an enjoyable position to go over. Lots of talent. It seems like every day I hear of a new guy that pops up that maybe I need to go back and study a little bit more. Oh yeah, we did this one early too. So January 14th. So this is going to be a bit okay. We'll see. Number 1, Devontae Smith. 2, Jamar Chase. 3, Kadarius Toney. 4, Rashad Bateman. 5, Tyler Wallace. 6, Terrace Marshall. 7, Elijah Moore. 8, Jalen Waddle. 9, Amari Rogers. And then this one was a big surprise to some that saw it. 10, Cornell Powell. And then I have my 11 through 42. Rondale Moore, Terry, Dwayne Eskridge, which should be the apostrophe there, but Anthony Schwartz, Tutu Atwell, Jonathan Adams. So looking at this list, what do you think about it? Who would you have higher? Who's your favorite guy? Allowing you the freedom to elaborate, my friend.
Yeah, so to answer a couple of your questions, my receiver 1 is Jamar Chase, and he has been throughout the entire process. I mean, for me, I know, and I'm not going to argue with you having Devontae Smith number 1, who I think is an unbelievable prospect in his own right. And he's my receiver 2, by the way. But for Chase, to me, it's just, sometimes I feel like this community, as a draft community, maybe we suffer from recency bias a little bit. And we didn't get to see Chase play in 2020, but I go back in 2019 and watch that guy set the single season, SEC record for touchdowns and yards as a true sophomore, in 2019, with guys like Justin Jefferson and Terrace Marshall on his team. So it's not like he's the only guy carrying weight there. And they had a great running back too, right? So So many options in that offense, but he was the number one guy. And when I look at what Justin Jefferson did as a rookie, it just impresses me about Chase even more because I go back and say, wow, Jamar Chase was the clear cut number one option on a team that also had Justin Jefferson and also had Terrace Marshall, for that, as a matter of fact. There's just nothing he can't do, in my opinion. The speed, we saw it at the pro day. He ran a terrific time. He's physical. He's got great hands at the catch point. He's a handful. It's very tough for DBs to bully him and try to knock him off phase. His hands are terrific. He plucks the football out of the air. He's just a guy that I'm a huge fan of. I just don't see any holes in his game whatsoever. I really don't have anything bad to say about him. So he's my receiver one personally. I do have Devontae Smith as my receiver too. I mean, how can you not? It's to me, it's getting a little ridiculous how much we're focusing on his weight. The guy hasn't really been hurt in college, so I'm not going to rack my brain worried about if he's going to get hurt at the next level. I understand we haven't had a lot of successful receivers in the NFL that weigh what Devontae Smith weighs, but when you watch him on tape, I don't know how you don't get excited. Right, the route running is just unbelievable. To the short routes, intermediate, everything he does is just incredible in the route running phase. He's a tough cover. His hands are just unbelievable. The guy doesn't drop anything. You know what I mean? And he might be small. I think you'll agree with me on the scale, but I didn't see a lot of corners have success pressing him. It's not like he was getting dominated, at the line and he was getting bullied and pushed out of his routes. That's not the case with him, right? And the yards after catch, he makes defenders miss. I mean, I just love the guy, right? There's nothing bad to say about Devontae Smith. I would absolutely draft him, and then I'd get a great night's sleep after I did it. I wouldn't worry for a damn second about drafting Devontae Smith. If there's one thing that sticks out of your list, and I think you know what I'm going to say about a guy that you probably have lower than most of us others do, is Jalen Waddle out of Alabama. I mean, speed kills. We know what it is nowadays. It's the name of the game, and he can score every time he touches it. He's very tough to keep up with for a corner. I mean, it's a nightmare. I can't imagine being a corner lining up across from Jalen Waddle in coverage. It has to make you feel a little bit nervous, because you know what he can do. And how do you play him? If you overprotect and you're too worried about getting beat deep, then he's going to eat you underneath all day long, right? And we've seen what he does on special teams. I have a feeling, and this is just me purely speculating, I have a feeling he gets drafted before Devontae Smith. Now, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that, but I have a feeling it's going to happen. Because of the weight concerns, the league seems to be racking their brain about that and how much this league values speed. We see it every year. Ruggs last year, right? Ruggs went before Judy, I believe, and that's just the way it goes. People love speed, so I have a feeling Waddle goes before Smith, but that's probably the one big surprise. If I can give you a quick shout out, I love that you have Cornell Powell in your top 10. I know a lot of people, and I probably myself, I might not even have him that high, but I do absolutely love him. He's one of my favorite day 3 targets in this entire draft, regardless of position. 2020, he explodes onto the scene. Look, he just didn't get a lot of chances before that. He's a younger guy. Clemson had a lot of talented receivers, but he comes into 2020, grabs 53 balls, nearly 900 yards, 7 touchdowns. He got better and better. He exploded over the last couple of games of the season, and there's a lot to like about him. I think he's a great route runner. Yards after catch is just terrific, really dangerous in that area of the game. What he did against Ohio State, that's a big game for him, right? To go into the college football playoff, play a team like Ohio State, and prove himself against that competition. I thought he was terrific, and I'm a huge fan of his.
Absolutely. I appreciate that shout out. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a guy that, put on the tape and I'm like, okay, let's see what this Clemson offense does. I think I actually started seeing him when I was started from scratch, starting off with quarterbacks. Saw Trevor Lawrence. I'm like, okay, Trevor, trying to evaluate Trevor, and then seeing who's throwing it to. Okay, this Cornell Powell kid is so freaking physical. He's built like a brick, and this guy, it was extremely savvy, and I was like, this guy's better than a lot of guys that I've been watching here and there. So early in the process,
I felt the same way.
Yeah, early, absolutely. Early in the process, I'm like, this guy is a top 10, talent. I feel like are some of the things schemed for him? Sure, but even that's a skill. He still executes on his own accord alpha playing style. Very, his dexterity to play strength reminds me of, not as explosive as AJ Brown, but the physicality that he plays with, very similar prospects in that regard. And then when we go back up to the Smith and Chase, the debate that everybody else is having, I feel like, when I release my top 10, top 15 in a couple weeks, I feel like this may be a bit different. But one of the things I want to say about Devontae Smith as a prospect, and, back to some of the things I believe in, big picture simplicity, and then nuanced in the now, is big picture for Devontae Smith for me is the guy's going to play ball. Doesn't matter his weight, doesn't matter the size. You look at his 2 to 4 year projection, you see a player that's going to be smooth. He has the frame to add weight. He's going to get stronger. So even if you have that, those reservations about him, do you believe in your program to make him stronger then? You think he's light in the butt? Okay, put some weight on him. So that's the big picture eval, but being nuanced in the now, you look at his frame, no two height weights are the same. He's built in a different manner than some that are, like this isn't his official, 6'1", 175. I don't think, January 1st or January 14th, I don't think I had the official, but let's say he's 170. That he's not built like who's a receiver that is extremely wiry, like maybe a TJ Vasher, if you're familiar with him in this draft class, or who's a very, very lean wide receiver that we know from back, or
Tutu Atwell weighed in pretty light.
Perfect in this. I was thinking of someone in the past, but yeah, Tutu Atwell is a perfect example. That's not the same as Devontae Smith. When you look at how his body carries weight, you can easily see him putting on frame. The lean to his build. I think that's a little bit more in the nerdier side of the evaluation. But when you look at him as a prospect and get detail and nuance and how he's built, he has a lot more room to grow, and it's lean. There isn't flab. There isn't, too much bone. He's a very lean and protected player when it comes to just muscle density. And I think that's different than a guy. But back to Waddle, I will have to say that the only reason why he's lower, and obviously when you're doing this draft evaluation, wide receivers can be tiered. So it's like, who's your slot guy? Waddle will be higher if I just did specifically slot guys. And, this is a linear list. But Waddle, obviously speed kills. I'm not going to deny it. He's a player that's going to cause mismatches. But this is being nuanced again. His build, a lot of people comp him to Tyreek Hill. Usage, yes. Build, no. Tyreek Hill is a thickly built wide receiver. He's almost built. In fact, he played running back at Oklahoma State. He's a very thickly built prospect. Waddle he has some thin parts about his build, and even suffered an injury. Now, I'm not going to say that was because of the build, but suffered a significant injury. I think I even tweeted this, and I have to stand by it now. You know how I am with my receipts. But he's a guy that I feel like at the next level, this is just based off of, the nerdy eval going into the details. I think he'll be like the Sean Lee or Bob Sanders, if you know those two players, often injured, but when they show up, they show up. I think he'll be the Bob Sanders or the Sean Lee of the wide receivers of this class. I think he'll be an often injured guy, but when he shows up, he's gonna be a nightmare for defenses. And just because of that, I can't invest in a guy that may not be available. And obviously, most don't want to highlight the injury projection eval. You don't wish injury, but you also have to know and combine that eval. How does this guy's play style and his body type match? Is that going to translate well to guys who are more physical, more stronger, faster? So their anticipation might be off of when they might be on you. So it really comes down to that. And this is really just nerding out. Like I said, I've said that several times, but I feel like I have a gut feeling, which is also part of evaluation, that he'll be a guy that may not be available. So,
Look, you have every right to feel that way, right? I mean, he's been injured. He's not the biggest guy, obviously. So there are those concerns, and you know what? I can say this what I'm about to say, and I don't mind criticizing myself when I say it. Look, it's easy for people in this community to ignore those things because it's not our jobs on the line. You know what I mean? We're not the ones that are going to lose our jobs if we draft Jalen Waddle, right? I mean, and I'm not going to lose mine. You know what I mean? I'm not the GM making that decision. So there's a big disconnect. I will say there's a huge disconnect between how media evaluators look at this versus how NFL decision makers look at this, because it's important to them and it has to be important, right? So I get where you're coming from on that front. It can't be ignored. And one thing I will say, and you'll agree with me, is I pray to God that you're wrong, because if he is someone that's banged up a lot, we would be robbed of watching a terrific talent in the NFL. So let's all hope it doesn't happen.
Absolutely, and I think we want these prospects to prosper. I want every evaluation that I've ever done. I want those guys to be the best version of themselves.
Absolutely.
But it's all about, like you were talking about with the media and how everybody kind of disconnects, the injury aspect or even character to some degree, because like you said, no one has a true investment. Nobody's getting fired over your evaluation. But I guess because of how I was introduced or birthed to the mindset of how I evaluate, almost as if I am a GM or I feel like that's the best way for me to evaluate, because that's what puts the most, it motivates me, because I probably couldn't do it as just a media guy. So I definitely go deep. It's probably, you can't probably see it now, but it's probably why I got these gray hairs coming in.
It's all good, man. I feel you. I feel like I haven't slept in months. So it is what it is, but you got a solid 10 list here. I love seeing Amari Rodgers as high as you have him as well. And I like the Deebo Samuel comparison, because I think he can do a lot of the same things, right? I think you could put him in the backfield, right? Like San Fran has done with Deebo at times, and get him the ball. He's so damn physical. He's so physical after, with the ball in his hands and everything that he does. So that's a comparison that I really like there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, before we go to the Google documentary, like we did with the running back, some guys that might have sifted through, might be undrafted free agents, I do have two guys on this list that, I want to get your opinion on. Where is it? Trevon Grimes and Nico Collins. What do you think about these prospects?
Yeah, let me just I want to pull up some of my notes that I got on Nico Collins here, because I got some terrific notes on him. So what intrigues me about Nico Collins, and I think it might help him throughout this process, is I don't care if you and I have completely different opinions on the player. One thing that I think we will agree on is it's a damn shame how bad he got wasted in that Michigan offense, right? Let's just call it what it is. Let's call a spade a spade. The passing offense there is an abomination, right? And it has been for years. And unfortunately, it impacted guys like Nico Collins, right? He just didn't get the looks that he deserved. I mean, I don't know how many times on tape that he's overthrown, and they just don't take advantage of his gifts. He's a big guy, 6'4", 215. Didn't play in 2020, but the vertical speed, I mean, it's exciting, right? And the way he pairs it with ball skills, he's a huge threat to make plays down the field. Again, Michigan's the wrong school for a guy like that, right? When the passing offense just isn't clicking and isn't working, they're not going to hit things vertically. They're not going to hit things deep down the field. So that was really unfortunate, but I think he's got great ball skills. He's got great speed. He scares DBs, when he lines up across from him, because he's such a big guy. Another thing I want to say about him, and I haven't done this a lot tonight, but interviewing him, I've interviewed so many guys in this class, and he's somebody that just puts a big smile on my face the entire time, because anybody that's ever had a chance to interact with him, I mean, he was laughing throughout the entire interview. This guy is one of the most happy, positive, just his energy was just so infectious. I mean, I left that conversation. I love Nico Collins. I love Nico Collins, the person, and I do like the player. And, I'm curious to see where he ends up. And I'm curious to see where he gets drafted, because I think he can go as early as the second round. I don't think he goes later than the 4th, but that's a pretty big gap right there, round 2 to 4. I'm very curious to see which round he ends up in between that range. I do think round 2 is probably his ceiling, but I also think the 4th round is his basement. Now, you also asked me about Trayvon Grimes out of University of Florida. This is another big guy, about 6'4". I think he was at the Senior Bowl, weighed in at 6'4", just a hair under 220. He transferred from Ohio State to Florida, right? He just wasn't getting the looks that he needed there at Ohio State, so he picked up. He went to a different program, and he played a lot of football at Florida. This is a guy that plays up to his size, right? When I say that he's 6'4", 217, he looks it on film and he plays like it. He's a big boy, and you could see it. DBs have a tough time. He knows how to use his body. He knows how to use his size to his advantage. He does a great job shielding, using his body to shield defenders at the catch point. Nico, in a sense, where he can go run a vertical route, and he can make those plays down the field. He's got good ball skills. He's a good run blocker, right? He uses that size. He understands his assignment as a run blocker. I worry about the speed, right? And that's kind of the question with guys like him, right? It always is does he have enough speed? Yes, the stride length is terrific, right? And that's where he kind of at times can make up for the lack of elite speed. His strides, he's got these crazy big, long strides. But is he fast enough to make a living and survive at the next level? That would be the one question, the one big question I have on him. And I imagine most NFL teams have that same question.
Yeah, so no need to ask if we're in the war room and I say, Melo, who we taking here, Grimes or Collins?
Yeah, I'm going Collins. Yeah, I'm definitely going Collins for sure. But again, man, I'm rooting for all these guys. So can Grimes be a good NFL player? Absolutely. I think he's got the ability. He's got the skill set to do so. But for me, if I was driving the car and it was my decision, then I would draft Nico Collins.
Gotcha. I would agree, and I wanted to get that eval because there are two guys that are big, have that ability to go up and body DBs, and I just wanted to get that eval. And I think that's high value there. The differentiate or how you differentiated both of those guys was basically, Collins is a little bit more of a vertical threat. You feel more confident in his ability to separate and win vertically, and that's a simple aspect of the game. I'm also, from a character perspective, I don't know enough about Trayvon Grimes, but I would have to agree with the study and the psyche study that I've done with Collins. He's definitely a joy to listen to. And here
it really is.
Yeah, absolutely. Here are some of the guys, and you probably have interviewed some of these guys, much like what we did with the running backs. What we did with the running backs and the fullbacks. Kind of look through this list, possible undrafted free agents, even though I think Darby gets drafted later. But look through some of these guys you like, and if you've interviewed them, give us a little, a little update on their character.
Yeah, I got a couple of notes on these guys. The first one I'm going to talk about is about an interview that I did yesterday. So I haven't published it yet. Of course, it's really early in the process. I will be publishing it before the draft, but I just did it yesterday. I just finished editing it, and I called somebody to talk about this interview. I almost never do that, but Frank Darby out of Arizona State is such an incredible, exciting person. If you get a chance to ever know and learn more about Frank Darby, this is a guy. What I said about Nico Collins, and I love Nico Collins, about the positivity, about the energy, magnify that times 10. And that's what you get in Frank Darby. I mean, I get this guy on the phone. He's already smiling. He says to me, I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to this interview. I love meeting new people. And he was born in Jersey City. And Jersey City is not the safest place for a kid, right? The streets of Jersey City are not a great place. And he told me, Justin, the amount of people I grew up with that unfortunately ended up in things that they shouldn't have ended up in. I made every effort as a child to make sure I didn't go down that path. In elementary school, I played football, I played basketball, I played volleyball. The reason I played those 3 sports, yes, I enjoyed playing sports, but one of the reasons I played those 3 sports, it kept me so busy. It kept me out of the streets. And that's exactly, how he said it. Football ended, basketball started. One ended, volleyball started. It kept me busy. I did that on purpose. I had no time to get into something that I shouldn't have been getting into. And I asked him, I said, everybody I've spoken to, everybody that knows you says you're so positive. And I just loved his outlook on life. And I'm excited that I get to talk about this here because he said to me, he goes, Justin, why wouldn't I be positive? I'm not in Jersey City anymore. I wake up every day and I see the sun shining. I went to college. I made a goal for myself and I achieved it. I went to Arizona. I got out of Jersey and I went to Arizona and I traveled the country playing college football. And now I'm going to the NFL. I can't give you one damn reason why I shouldn't smile. This has been one of my favorite guys that I have spoken with this entire, I'm just going to say it. My favorite guy that I've spoken to this entire cycle because you just can't help but root for him. And I told him he's got a lifelong fan in me, and I'm going to congratulate him when he hears his name called because that's the guy that you want to root for. And by the way, watching his tape before I met him, before I interviewed him, I'm glad because I already really like the player. I think he's a really, really good route runner, really underrated. And I can't wait to drop that interview because I want everybody to see what kind of person he is. Moving on, Connor Weddington, I'm glad to see him on your list from Stanford. I think he has the potential to be an elite special teams player. I think that's a guy that can return kicks, return punts at the next level, and do it, very effectively. Brendan Smith out of Iowa, it's another big-bodied guy who turned a lot of heads at the House of Athletes Combine, right? That facility that Brandon Marshall owns. He posted a crazy vertical out there, turned a lot of people onto him. The interview drops tomorrow being Friday, April 9th. I don't know when you're dropping this, but that Brandon Smith interview I did drops Friday, April 9th. I had a lot of fun with him. He has a pet snake named Rufus. I know that's an awkward transition, but I thought that was hilarious. As I'm preparing for this interview with him, I get an email and I open up my email and it's a picture of him with a snake. And I was lost for words. I didn't know what to say, but I go, I know I got to ask him about this. So he's got a pet snake, Rufus, that he loves. He got the name from a book that he read in college. I can't remember the name of the book now, but he told me it was a great story that he told me. Dax Milne is another guy that I really like to see on your list out of BYU because we're not talking about him enough. All this hype for Zach Wilson. Don't get me wrong. I love Zach Wilson. I'm a big fan. But when you're watching the Zach Wilson tape, who's coming down with all those balls that he's throwing? Who's coming down with the balls that he's throwing downfield? It was Dax Milne more often than not. He was their number one receiver. So why aren't we talking about him a little bit? That's a fun guy. Another sleeper that you have on here is Michael Strachan from Charleston. What a huge guy, 6'5", and your Val's correct there. He's every bit of 6'5". He's a huge bodied guy. I'm not sure I've seen a bigger guy throughout this process, and he's exciting. And I got to tell his story a couple months ago. He was one of my first interviews this cycle back in February. I'm rooting for him. I just noticed that you have Jacob Harris on here. I didn't see that until right now, this very second. He's a guy that I interviewed yesterday as well. So I haven't dropped that yet. I just reported on Twitter today how many teams he's met with virtually. Teams are showing a lot of interest in him. Again, he's legit 6'5". He's still new to the game of football. He only started playing as a senior in high school. I found that to be incredibly interesting. This guy was dreaming of playing professional soccer when he discovered football and said, you know what, I like this better. So I thought that was super interesting. He's a guy that's grown every year, 8 touchdowns as a senior this past year for UCF. Talk about a guy that made big plays down the field. Again, that stride length. He's a guy on tape where, and he said this to me, I feel like when he gets up on DBs or he's off the line, you don't realize how he's running. It's when he gets up on you that you're like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. He's right up on me now, and you're in trouble at that point because that 6'5", those stride lengths, he's out of here. So this is a good little list you got here, and I know I'm talking your ear off, but I've talked about a lot of these guys. That's a great list there.
Yeah, appreciate it. No, I enjoy it. Talk away. You're giving the people great insight. I'm learning the tidbits. I mean, Brandon Smith has a snake named Rufus. I mean,
right? I mean, that's a lot of fun. When I drop the interview tomorrow, check my timeline because I think I'm gonna take that picture and I have to tweet the picture because it was I didn't even know. I was lost for words. I get this picture completely randomly in my email of him with a snake, and they're like, "This is his snake. His name is Rufus." And I'm like, "Well, it's settled. I have to ask him about this."
Absolutely. I mean, that's great insight. I mean, what you do, and I've already said it in the intro and edification is, I mean, it's amazing the amount of prospects you have to interview Um, and then the insight that you get. I mean, fans should eat that up. And then just from a perspective of the value that that could bring to future jobs and future, positions. I mean, it takes organization, it takes courage to go out here and interview these guys. Obviously, you have value as a writer. One of the more talented guys that we have in this draft stratosphere, and really respect your work, as I said before. And as we wrap this up, I do have some questions I ask everybody that's gotten on as Nick. We have had this conversation privately too, Nick and I, is what are some of the tricks of the trade that, some of your more proud moments of getting the guy right, and what correlated? For example, I'll start to give you just a preface. Running backs for me, like I kind of mentioned, guys that break tackles, guys who's always falling forward. That was one thing with Derrick Henry when I was watching tape of him back in the way back, was his ability to always uncanny, and this had to do with his length, his height, was always falling forward. Rarely was he ever pushed back. That's something that taught me that running backs who do that, you always get the that hidden yardage. Fullback, very, very, if a guy's crazy enough to go full speed and knock somebody's head off, very easy eval for fullbacks for me. Just you see it is one of the more easier, prospects or a position to kind of evaluate, not underhanding it or anything, but it's very easy to see. If you got it, you got it. Wide receiver is one of the things that I notice tricks of the trade that kind of gets a consistent output of accuracy for me is, a lot of it is mentality, the confidence. Route running is something that can be learned, but you definitely want to get a guy that understands concepts, route tree. And then outside of that is, size has a component to it, but it's really about the mentality. Can they overcome if they're small? Do when the ball's in the air, is it theirs or are they timid? One of the things with Corey Davis, and not to, he did great things with the Tennessee Titans. A lot of fans support him. Was he's a little bit more on the quiet side. As we know in this market, he was beloved for that. But I think that I loved angry Corey. When he played angry, I loved him in that mode as opposed to more timid. And I think that's very important, the mentality. And as I'm thinking and saying this, Elijah Moore just pops up in my mind. As a guy that kind of plays above his size, that is very gritty. And those are some of the things, tricks of the trade that kind of help me have a consistent eval. What are some at each position that kind of helps you, if you have any?
Yeah, for me, I think you brought up some good points there. For running backs, personally, again, guys that keep their legs churning through contact, right? I think that's a really important trait because those little yards start to add up. Guys who got running backs that add 2-3 yards to every single run. I mean, by the end of the game, I mean, you've punished the defense and you've made life very difficult on them. For receivers, you said it about guys that attack the ball in the air. I think that's very important. I want my receiver to have a little diva in them. It's a diva position. I want them to say, I'm going to go up and that's my ball and I'm going to make the catch. This is my ball. But I also really like guys who do a lot of damage after the catch. I think right now, as the game, the way this game is changing every year, it's becoming more offensive every single year. Right. And I think the most important thing is getting guys that can create after the catch. I think it's such a big aspect of not the most important thing, but it's such a big aspect of the game right now. It's such a beautiful added bonus to these explosive offenses. One thing I'll add about corners, for me, a big part of my evaluation is, in my opinion, this is a man coverage league. If you can't make a living in press coverage, if you can't be physical at the line and try to bully a receiver and really try to dominate from the opening whistle of a rep, then I have concerns about you. I love corners that live and die in press coverage because that's the name of the game. Corners that have the confidence to go out there and survive on an island, to be on that island and say, it's me versus you and I'm going to win. I think that's, you talk about the mentality of receivers that can go up and get it. And it's kind of the same thing, right? Corners that have that mentality that say, I want to go live out on the edge. I'm going to live on my own and you're not going to catch this ball. I'll tell you two guys that have it in this class that I love, and I think both of them are worthy of first-round picks that, we're all talking about, but is Greg Newsome from Northwestern and Eric Stokes from Georgia. I'm a big fan of both those players for that reason right there.
Absolutely. It's funny. It's funny you say that, because I was thinking about, okay, who am I going to have on for the cornerbacks when I start going heavy defense, when I'm, who's going to come on War Room Reports or Top Corner. It may be you. I might circle back if you're free. Is during that eval, is I tend to gravitate towards corners that have that ability. That, obviously we didn't talk about it now, in this episode, but I nail the guys that can do, that have that mentality. I play the position. I know what it takes, but sometimes I miss on guys that are more zone oriented, that may be lacking like the physical traits, because usually in order to be a press guy, you have to be able to move. You have to be very fluid. You have to be aggressive. And then some guys that excel at zone, they don't necessarily have like all the physical traits, but they are intelligent.
Right.
They read the quarterback well. They drive down towards the line of scrimmage very well. A guy that comes to mind that I missed on last year was Jordan Fuller, who went to the Rams and played extremely well. Yes, he has a great front seven, but at the end of the day, he was a great prospect in the zone, and I didn't look at him in that perspective. But it's awesome that you mentioned corners. Thanks for including them, because that was something that I value as well. If you cannot play man, if you are not, a dog, as we like to say in the scouting community, then it's going to be hard. I think that has to be the foundation. You can't, because at some point you're going to have to play man, and that's something that I noticed with zone guys. I might get the zone aspect wrong, but usually that man aspect comes to light. Somebody's going to pick on you if you can't open those hips and you don't have that mentality. So thank you for that. And I might invite you on the cornerbacks depending on who I got. I got some guys in the works that may be on the corner eval, but if you're free, I might have you hop on as well. So it's a deep class as well, so I might need some help there. But definitely thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for the insight. Like I said, I can't say enough how much I value what you bring to the scouting community. All year we kind of work up for this point. Everybody's doing their own thing. We don't have an opportunity to kind of shout guys out. Definitely wanted to do this, and appreciate you, man. Let the people know once again how to contact you and what you have planned in the next, for the draft cycle and in the future.
Yeah, appreciate you inviting me on. Always fun talking ball, Charles. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Justin M_NFL. Pretty straightforward, but that's JUSTINM_NFL. What I have on deck is mock draft scouting reports, but more than anything, it's interviews on interviews. I mean, today's April 8th. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm dropping 50 interviews, between now and April 29th, and and it's all new interviews that have not been released yet. So I've got so much content coming over these next couple of weeks. I'll be doing mock drafts. I'll be talking Titans needs and players. I'm planning on writing something about maybe day 3 guys that I think fit the Titans scheme, that some players that maybe fans want to familiarize themselves with as we head into draft weekend. So that's where you can find me. Make sure you're following the Draft Net on Twitter. We got so much great work coming. Make sure you're following Broadway Sports Media at Broadway 10. That's BROADWAYTN. So much great Titans content coming your way from guys like, Mike Herndon, who everybody knows, and John Glennon and the F Words Pod crew. So much great Titans work coming, so much draft work coming. I'm excited for these next couple of weeks, and feel free, if you're listening to this, hit me up, ask me questions. I try to be as active as I can be, try to get back to everybody and answer my mentions. So, hit me up and let's talk draft, because this is what I do.
That is what he does. Justin Melo, thanks for hopping on again. And, we'll see you in the future. I'm pretty sure we'll collab again. Once again, thank you. Can't say it enough for the professionalism and the eval. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We definitely got smarter, and I will see you guys on the next one. Next episode, we're going to be going over quarterbacks and cornerbacks, quarter and corner. We will see you then. So thanks, Justin, and see you.